If you are not a fan of tight spaces, you might want to turn off the video now. However, if you are a fan of being terribly uncomfortable for 50 minutes straight, well, come on in. The water is warm and filled with dismembered body parts. Haze is another wonderfully weird film created by cult Japanese hero Shinya Tsukamoto, who writes, directs, and stars. We already highlighted one of his bizarre productions back in 1989 with Tetsuo the Iron Man, but one Tsukamoto film is never enough. Similar to that movie, Haze is a pulse-racing sensory experience. The plot is thinner than a Mikado stick, but just as tasty. Yum yum. A man awakes in a very dark, very clamped tunnel system. We, the audience, are just as puzzled as him, as he struggles to recall how he got here, what this place actually is, and why he's here.
Who am I? What am I?
Still, he has no choice but to push forward through this disturbingly claustrophobic nightmare. An early challenge requires him to slide through a narrow chamber, mouth open, with teeth scraping all along the metal as his hand and footholds are laced with barbed wire. Yep, that should give you an idea of what this film is. As the man endures these tasks, he learns that there are others suffering down here too. He ultimately begins philosophizing on the meaning of it all, and he must decide whether escape is possible or even worth it. People like me, who hate confined spaces, will certainly feel the terror that Haze brings to the table. Along with films like Buried, it is one of the most claustrophobic cinematic experiences available. Tsukamoto has an unfettered desire to make you suffer with the protagonist. The lingering darkness, the extreme close-ups, the shaky movements, and the frenzied editing style places you slap bang in the middle of this ordeal, whether you like it or not. Unless you watch Haze during the day, in which case you won't see a thing from the sun's glare. I recommend you watch this film at night, preferably enclosed by a thick prison of metal scrap. But yeah, all this metallic body horror, existential dread, underlined with a new metal soundtrack, will be very familiar to followers of this man's work. Haze was released in 2005, which was around the time that torture porn was really blowing up. It has a lot in common with American-produced films of the period, the grittiness of Hostel, and the fact that this is just like an extended Saw trap. There is even dialogue that shares a major theme with Saw, the notion of going through such horror to find your will to live. In terms of story though, Haze doesn't give any satisfactory answers like the Saw films,
Game over.
or the opportunity for cathartic revenge like the Hostel films. Much of Haze is left entirely ambiguous by design, which makes it scarier and leaves it open for audience interpretation. The protagonist wonders, who is doing this to them? Are they prisoners of war? Is this a sick game orchestrated by a rich pervert? Yum yum. You can weigh these options and figure it out for yourself. And why is this happening? Well, there are even more options for that. To me, the whole thing is a metaphor for depression and loneliness. Navigating this inescapable dungeon, where you feel impossibly trapped and alone in the dark, where everything is confused and has no meaning, and your memory becomes foggier by the moment. And, as the man says, even if they do escape, what is there really waiting for them back in the outside world? Again, this is just my reading of the film, and it probably says more about me than it does Haze. To be honest, I could read that interpretation into everything from Haze to Thomas the Bloody Tank Engine. What's the point of living anymore?
Said Thomas.
I would be curious to hear your interpretations and theories in the comments section, if any of you have already endured Haze. And if you haven't yet, the film is only like 48 minutes long, no excuses. That runtime is short, but it is a mercy. If the film was any longer, it could have become too unbearable, or lost its appeal somewhere along the way. In the hands of a lesser filmmaker, this very same concept and script could have been a dreadful one-star mess, but the existing film is a really successful and disturbing trip into a pitch-black hell.